Aliens are weird, yes, but what comes to mind when you think of them? Little gray men? Maybe reptilian monsters? Or even tall, blonde, glowing people being channeled by your hippie aunt during the holidays? Well, what if I told you that they get much more odd than that? Today we're looking at some of the weirdest aliens ever encountered by man, here at the Insomnia Society. This first encounter takes place on December 16th of 1957 in Old Saybrook, Connecticut. A retired teacher named Mary M. Starr was sound asleep in her bed when she was awoken by a bright light outside her window at around 2 to 3 in the morning. Peering outside, she noticed that what she first thought was a downed airplane, but soon realized the craft was hovering just a few feet above her washing line. The craft had large square windows, and through these she was able to see two creatures inside. They both passed by each other with their right arms in the air, and Miss Starr noticed the arms had no appendages. She noticed too that where the head should be sat a clear, transparent cube, and inside of it was a glowing red orb. This was sat on top of a rubbery-looking body that flared out like a skirt. She couldn't see any legs, but guessed that the creatures were about 4 feet tall. As she watched from her window, the windows on the craft vanished and a sparkling antenna rose from one end. The entire ship began to glow for several minutes, and once it subsided, the vehicle took off in a complicated path through the air before shooting off without a sound. The beings in this case are unique looking and have an original appearance to what we usually see from aliens, but there isn't much information to the case. Though in my research, I think I might have found one other case that connects to this one. The entity is called the Spectre of Winterfold and comes to us from a write-up in Flying Saucer Review, written by Charles Bowen. On the damp, cloudy morning of November 13th, 1967, a young couple from Woking, Surrey in the UK had an eerie encounter. Philip Freeman, age 22, and Angela Carter, age 20, neither of which are strict believers in aliens, had left Philip's brother's house in Cranley at about 12:30 a.m. after an evening of watching TV. They took the route from Cranley to Sheer, which was quicker than the main roads, but forced them to take a more desolate and forested path. The car hadn't heated up properly yet, and because of this, the windshield began to fog over. With no other traffic around, Philip stopped the car on the side of the road about 2 miles from Cranley. He turned off the headlights, but left the side lights and the engine running as he got out to wipe down the windshield. As he did, the first thing that struck him was a terrible odor. The smell was described similar to that of extremely burnt food, and this too was smelt by Miss Carter in the passenger seat as he exited the vehicle. The night was pitch black, with nothing other than Philip's side and rear lights for illumination. As he got back into the driver's seat, he looked over to Miss Carter and was shocked to see a face staring back at him through the passenger window. Except it wasn't exactly a face. It was about 10 inches long and 8 inches wide and close to the window. There were no visible features like eyes or a mouth. Instead, it was blank, white, and sharply defined. Since there was no moonlight for reflection, Mr. Freeman believes that it was possibly giving off a soft glow. There was also something that looked like an arm that was reaching towards the top of the car, stemming from a completely dark body. Miss Carter had just begun to complain about the smell to Philip when she saw the look of terror come over him. Instinctively, she refused to turn around, and Philip, not wasting any time, threw the car into drive. In the short time it took him to do that, he saw the being appear in his rearview mirror as they pulled away. In the rear lights, he got a better view of the body, noticing the creature was bell-shaped, standing on 2 white or luminous legs at about the height of his vehicle, which is little more than 4 feet tall. The whole experience was thought to have taken less than 2 minutes, and with new courage, Philip asked Miss Carter if she wanted to go back with the headlights on, to which she refused. It was also noticed that the smell disappeared as soon as they left the area. The two went home and told their story, but like most at that time, they were laughed at. This is a witness sketch of the creature, and this is an artist's rendition of the Old Saybrook Blockheads. Let me know in the comments if you think these two beings might share a connection, or if you know of any other sightings like this. The odor mentioned in the story is also something unique. Philip stated it might have been mixed with a stink bomb type smell, which sulfur can be used for, and the smell of sulfur or other pungent odors are often linked to reports of UFO sightings. Our next alien encounter comes from Action magazine, which was a post-war men's pulp adventure magazine that seems to have only been published for a single year, and comes from its May 1953 issue contained in the article, "I Rode a Flying Saucer." In July of 1951, a pilot named Fred Reagan was flying his single-engine Piper Cub in the skies of Georgia, USA, when a pulsating, lozenge-shaped aircraft collided with his. His plane was shattered into 1,000 pieces, but stayed where they were as he was thrown into the open air. As he fell earthward, he was caught by a, quote, sticky, clinging force, and began to be pulled towards the ship. He was pulled through a circular hatch and found himself in a dimly lit room, surrounded on all sides by 3 tall, metallic stalks of asparagus, like the vegetable. This horrified him so much he quickly fainted. He soon recovered and heard a metallic, stilted voice speaking to him in English from some sort of loudspeaker. They apologized for the crash, not meaning to cause an accident, and that they were friendly, only here to study the primitive society of Earth. In return, they gave him a quick medical exam and found him to be in good health, except for a small tumor which they, quote, adjusted as a slight reparation for the loss we have caused you. So essentially, they healed him. The voice then warned Reagan not to tell anyone, as they wouldn't believe him anyways. After this, he lost consciousness. When he came to again, he was in the hospital. He was told that he was found unharmed in the middle of a farmer's cornfield. Nearby was the wreckage of his plane, and the engine had hit with such force it had penetrated the ground by 6 feet. Sadly, there's a follow-up of what apparently happened to Fred Reagan from a supposed news clipping from 1952, included in a write-up by Lauren Gross. It reads, Atlanta, May 16. Fred Reagan, who made headlines last year when he claimed he had been a visitor aboard a flying saucer, died today in the state asylum for the insane. Cause of death was determined to be degeneration of brain tissue due to extreme atomic radiation. Authorities are unable to offer explanation. Now, it's sad if true, but it seems the aliens may have helped with one disease and given him another entirely by accident. The thing is, the original article of his passing has never been found. In October 1972, an American UFO researcher named Glemser wrote a letter to the Georgia State Department of Public Health. He asked for a copy of the certificate of death for a Mr. Fred Reagan. He was written stating that they don't have any record of that name in their files. Moreover, no CAB aircraft accident report has ever been uncovered and linked to the event. In some ways, the encounter was prophetic, predating the Betty and Barney Hill abductions by a decade, whose encounter also involved a similar medical checkup. And now for the stalks of asparagus. There's a belief that aliens can change their form based on the perception of the persons viewing them, possibly used in this case to try and make them feel more comfortable. We have no record of Mr. Reagan's history, but it's possible in Georgia he may have worked on a farm, or been in the air above one, which is why they took the form of asparagus to him. So, what do you think? Are there sentient spring vegetables soaring through space? Government cover-up? Or maybe just someone with a really good imagination? If you're enjoying the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss some of the weirdest paranormal stories. Okay, back to the video. This next case comes to us from Palos Verdes in California, and it's wild. It was reported in Flying Saucer Review, Volume 23, June 1977. At 2 a.m. on the night of August 17, 1971, 2 men in their late 20s, named Peter Rodriguez and John Hodges, entered their vehicle after leaving a nearby friend's house on Dapple Gray Lane. Turning on the headlights, they were shocked at the sight about 6 feet in front of them. 2 large disembodied brains laid in the roadway. They were bluish in color and surrounded by their own cloud of vapor. One was described as slightly bigger than a softball, and the other the size of a human torso. and that larger one had a big red eye in the center of its frontal lobe. At first confused by what they were seeing, the puzzlement soon turned to horror and the pair sped off. Hodges dropped Rodriguez off a short time later and made his way home. When he arrived, he was shocked to see that it was already 4:30 a.m. A drive that would have taken him 10 minutes had taken over 2 hours. Those who experience an abduction will often report cases of missing time, or lapses in their memory of events that they can't account for. Such was the case of John Hodges, and this feeling gnawed at him for years. In 1976, he decided to undergo hypnotic regression to see if he could figure out what happened. The first thing he recalled was the larger brain speaking to him telepathically when they had first seen it. It said, "If we do not take the time to understand ourselves, we will be the instruments of our own fate. That there are many like us, and we will come to know our place in the world." Then the larger one moved back and said, "We will meet again. Until that time, you will not remember what has gone on here." He then dropped off Rodriguez without a problem and headed home. When he arrived, though, he may not have been alone. He blacked out in his driver's seat and had a dream that was way too real to be a dream. He was back at the hill, asking the brains why it was him that they wanted, and he was teleported to what he called a, quote, control room. It was lined with computers, and he saw the brains, along with another group of creatures which scared him even more. Hodges described them as, "They are tall, skin gray, yellow eyes, very thin eyes, mouths but no lips, funny flat noses. Their hands have long, thin fingers, 6 fingers, and a thumb. They're webbed more or less from the palm to the first knuckle. Their feet are much the same. They're barefoot but not naked, wearing gray vests and gray pants. Looks like a kind of plastic or vinyl with a spongy cuff. Something like a donut around their ankle. No belt, but a line seems to separate the pants from the vest. They're about 7 feet tall." Hodges suspected that the beings were crewmen, working on the computers, but the brains told him that those were the people who monitor our world, because there's too much power. The brains then beckoned him to watch a series of images on a 3D holographic display. He was shown images of explosions and points on a map of Earth. The aliens explained to him that these were areas where there was too much power, and showed him another image of a destroyed planet, which also had too much power. Hodges then felt a buzzing run through his body, and opening his eyes, he was back in his car, the brains nowhere to be seen. Later they drew their depictions of the brains, which we have here. And Hodges speculated that the ship he had been in was possibly a holographic projection, accounting for the void of darkness behind him while on the ship. The entire room was gray, and he recounted the creatures that he had seen. He said, quote, "They were on my side of the board, so I got a good look at them, especially number 2 and number 3, who were facing me. They had no expression, just bland. Normal body width, very humanoid, but no hair. They made minor turning movements, almost robot-like. Their appearance wasn't robot-like, only their movements. They seemed totally oblivious to what was going on." Hodges felt the whole thing had the sense of theater about it, like it was a show being put on for him. Skeptics claim that they may have had a little too much to drink before leaving, and Hodges had a vivid nightmare in his driveway. But then how does that explain Rodriguez as well? Both gave independent, identical accounts of their path from their friend's home to the car, the position of the car, and the objects in the road. Their independent sketches were similar, and both witnesses independently commented on the block in memory during the encounter on the road. So, what was it Hodges and company experienced on that night? Alien races will often warn about the horrors of humankind in our track record of wars. But have you ever thought that it might be a ruse? It wouldn't be unlike the humans they warn about, to lie and get an enemy to lower their defenses before they attack. But if that's the case, why just a regular guy like Hodges and not a government official? And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the brain from planet Aros. It was a 1957 black and white sci-fi horror movie, which, you guessed it, features space brains, which bear a striking resemblance to the ones from Palos Verdes. Let me know what it was you think the two saw down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're new here, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any strange stories from the paranormal world. It gets weird out there, so stay safe, guys.